This video is all about the Dell U2723QE. So I'm making this video as a follow-up to my last video. I'll put a link to it up here and you can go and have a look at that, because I've recently upgraded from a Mac late 2012 model to the new Mac Studio, which is here. And I've paired it up with these two screens. They're both Dell U2723QE screens, and I've had lots of questions and comments about these screens on social media, and I thought I'd do an update to that video and answer some of those questions in this. So what's the screen like? Well, overall I'm really impressed so far, but we'll get to that in a second. What comes in the box, first of all? So obviously you get the screen, you get the stand, and you get a bunch of cables. So you get a USB-C to USB-C cable, which is what these screens are connected with at the moment to my Mac Studio. But you also get one of these, which is a USB-A to USB-C. And you also get a full-size display port to full-size display port as well. So they're the two cable, or the three cables that you get in the box with the power cord. And like I say, these are connected using the USB-C cable at the moment. You also get a quick start guide, which looks something like that. And you also get a monitor calibration factory report, which looks like this. So each monitor is calibrated at the factory and it's tuned for sRGB, Rec 709 and DCI-P3. There's also grayscale tracking and a gamma calibration as well. So the DCI-P3, Rec 709 and sRGB is all calibrated to a delta of less than 2, which is actually really quite accurate, especially good for photo work. So that is actually really good to get that. Now that is something that's not really publicized very much, unlike the BenQ models and the Asus ProArt models, which I also considered, but the Dells are calibrated in the factory to quite a high standard, so that's pretty good. That's worth considering. What else? What other questions have I had? Are there any? I've got a list here. Are there any connection issues? Well, I've only connected these monitors with USB-C. So I believe the Mac is using the Thunderbolt 4 ports at the back, which are capable of doing lots of things. So not only are they Thunderbolt 4, they're USB 3.1 Gen 2, I believe, if I've got my facts right, and also mini DisplayPort. So I believe it's using mini DisplayPort over USB-C technology to provide the video signal from the Mac to the display. But not only that, it's using that USB-C cable to transfer data as well. So that's the only connection, that's the connection that I'm using at the moment for both of these screens. So each of these screens is going into its own USB-C Thunderbolt 4 port on the back of the Mac. Are there any connection issues? Not as far as I can tell. I know some of the BenQ monitors have had reports of connection issues, and I've had absolutely none at all with this. Overall, I'm really impressed with everything. What's it like waking and sleeping? How does it react? Well, as you can see, it's just gone to sleep while I've been talking. So if I hit the space bar, you'll see that the monitors will wake up. You get the Dell notification saying that the USB-C input is active, and then the screen comes on. So by waking the computer up like that, it's absolutely no problem at all. It's pretty responsive. And likewise, if I put the computer back to sleep, you'll see that the screens go blank. You get the Dell notification saying scanning for signal, and then very shortly it will change to no USB signal is detected from your device. And then it says going into standby mode, and then the screens go blank, and that's it, they're in standby. There's one little white light on the corner just down here, I don't know if you can see that. That stays on all the time, and it just glows now. It just steadily glows when it's in sleep mode. And then likewise, once again, to wake it up, hit the space bar, computer wakes up, my Drobo is firing up, the screen's come alive and says USB-C input is active, and that's it, the thing's awake. So pretty responsive, and yeah, no complaints at all. Hope that helps. The next question is all about scaling. Now I've had quite a few people interested in this question. So this is running at, it's a 4K screen, but I'm running it at 2560 by 1440, which is the same as my old 2012 iMac. Now I could change that, so let me go into the settings. I'll spin the camera around and I'll talk you through it. Okay, hopefully that gives you a fairly good view of my left hand screen. So I'm going to go into the system preferences and go down to displays and display settings. Now I'll choose this screen, so this is my extended display. Now I've got this scaled and I'm using it at, as I said, 2560 by 1440, which is the same 2K resolution that I had on my iMac. Now if I go for default for display, you'll see that everything gets bigger in size and it looks a bit too basic and simple. The menu bar at the top is too big, and the windows are too big, and text is, it's sharp, but everything is just too big. So you're kind of losing the benefit of 4K by doing this. So if you go to scaled, you've got all these different options. If I go to the other extreme of 3840 by 2160, so this is native 4K, everything gets really small. Now that might be what you're after if you're into photo editing and you want more screen real estate to play with. Good for video editing, and I suppose it's good for Lightroom as well. Let me just open up Lightroom. So on my right screen, which is just out of shot, it's actually a full screen window, but as soon as I drag it over to my left screen, which is running at 4K, the whole window has considerably shrunk in size. So if I now enlarge this, you can see that if I go to the develop module, you can just see just exactly how many of these settings you can have open on the right hand side. So it's actually really quite good for fitting lots on your screen, but you do need really quite good eyes to be able to see that small. So you know, there are other options you can play with these scaling settings. So if you go slightly bigger, or let's try the one in the middle, go back to Lightroom, you can see how the options on the right hand side, all the develop settings on the right hand side, have changed in size, so you get less of them on the screen, but they're bigger to see. So I guess it's a case of personal preference. If you play around with them, you might find one that suits you. But the important thing that I've noticed is that I don't think changing the scaling settings changes the quality or sharpness of the text on the screen at all. I've not seen any degradation by changing the screen resolution. I think it's perfectly acceptable whatever setting you use. Yeah, no complaints at all. So I'm leaving it on that one for now. And that one suits me fine. So that one gives me the kind of appearance that I'm used to on my iMac. So that's 2560 by 1440. I hope that helps. The next question I had is regarding light bleeding. Is there any light bleeding? This is where the backlight of the monitor just kind of leaks around the edges and the corners of the display. So I've used this website. It's basically a black YouTube video. Now you can see my reflection in the video, so this isn't probably of much value to you viewing, but I can tell here that to my untrained eye there is almost no, if any, backlight bleeding around the corners or the edges of the screen at all. So I think that's a pretty good result. What's the monitor like design wise? Well, it's got pretty thin minimalist bezels all the way around, and it's black and silver and has a fairly simple stand as well. There are no logos on any of the bezels, so it's equally at home vertical or horizontal in format, and the only logo really is this tiny Dell logo here. So it's pretty in keeping with the design language of the Mac and the Mac Studio. It's silver plastic rather than aluminium, but it's convincing enough to look like aluminium to fit in quite well, so I don't think that's an issue at all. As for the matte screen, well, I'm used to glossy displays over the past number of years. I've had a couple of iMacs now and I've had glossy screens, and I've had absolutely no problem transitioning to these screens. I think they're fantastic. When you're looking at them straight on, you can't see any reflections, less so than the iMac, even though my 2012 iMac had a non-reflective coating to it. These ones are even better. And certainly I think if you're printing, you're more likely to get something that resembles what a picture looks like on paper anyway. So overall, I'm really impressed with these matte finish screens. The other thing that's worth remembering is that these screens are using a brand new technology, which is black IPS. Now I think it was developed by LG, and at the time of these screens being released, LG haven't released their own version of black IPS yet. So this is a brand new technology. Normally IPS screens are around about 1000:1 contrast ratio. These are 2000:1, so I think the blacks should be blacker than a normal IPS screen. So that's worth bearing in mind. So it's kind of new technology to think about. These screens are currently set at their full height at the moment, and I quite like it that way so that I can get my my speakers just underneath rather than sitting them to the side or just behind, whatever. So these are at their full extent, but they do go all the way down. I'll show you a picture of that now. And like I said to you earlier, these are connected through USB-C to the Mac Studio, so that means that by using that connection, the USB hub on the back of the monitor is activated, so the data from the Mac can get transferred through the screens to the USB hub. There are quite a few sockets on the back. There are a number of USB 3 ports on the back, and there is also an Ethernet jack as well, and also underneath the monitor, which is just here, there is another USB 3 socket and a USB-C socket as well. So that's good for quick access to plug in thumb drives and things like that. That's a really good design feature, actually. I like that. And then on the back of the screen on the right hand side, you have the power button and also a little joystick which enters the on-screen menu. So there you go, that's my quick talk through of the Dell U2723QE screens. I hope you found that useful. I hope I've answered some of the questions that are out there about this screen, and thanks for joining me. If you found this video useful, please give this a big thumbs up, and I'm also a landscape and aviation photographer, and that's what most of my channel is about. So if you like that, please consider subscribing too. Thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon.